Hi, and welcome to my first ever edition of Dessert.Devotion. I'm excited to share with you two of my favorite things. The first is I love to bake, so I'll be sharing some easy recipes that you can use and treat yourself. The second is I love to share an inspiring and encouraging word. So put those two things together, Dessert.Devotion. Now, the first recipe that I'd like to share with you is one of my favorite cookie recipes. It's a peanut butter chocolate chip pretzel cookie. Is that too much? Nah. I'm going to share that with you now. All right, first we're going to start with our wet ingredients. That's 1 egg. It's 3 tablespoons of cooking oil, and finally 2 tablespoons of water. Now I like to go ahead and just beat the egg just a little bit. I think it makes it easier in the end to incorporate everything. Now we're going to add our dry ingredients. Oh, you didn't think we were doing this from scratch, did you? These are easy desserts. This is my favorite cookie mix, the Betty Crocker dry cookie mixes, and this is the peanut butter cookie mix. So I'm just going to incorporate that all together, keeping in mind that this dough is going to be stiffer. But if you keep stirring, it will all pull together in the end, trust me. And now we are going to add in our chocolate chips and pretzels. Now I'm using 1 cup of Ghiradelli milk chocolate chips and half a cup of crushed plain old pretzels. I just put them in a bag, y'all, and just like a sandwich bag, and crushed them up. And now the trick is just to stir them into your dough and try to get it in a nice even mix. Again, it's a stiffer dough, but it will pull together. As you see, it'll kind of come together to form a ball. And then you'll be ready to put it on your cookie sheet. So here I want to show you kind of the size I'm doing for my cookies. Not too large. I'm just using a plain old kitchen tablespoon and putting them on my cookie sheet. And I'm going to bake them in a preheated oven on 350 for 8 to 9 minutes. And now check it out. Our peanut butter chocolate chip pretzel cookies are done. Now, let's treat ourselves to some devotion time. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about boundaries. Maybe you've heard the expression before, no is a complete sentence. And I'm sure all of us have been in a situation where we wished we had said no on the front end. Now, sometimes we like to think that some people have great boundaries and others do not. They have weaker boundaries. But really, all of us fall somewhere in the middle. So I think this devotion is for all of us. Some of us have great boundaries at work, but we struggle with our boundaries maybe with our family, with our parents or our siblings or cousins, or maybe we struggle with the boundaries with our friends. Others of us have healthy boundaries with our families and friends, but maybe in the classroom or maybe at work, we're not as great of an advocate for ourselves, or we don't speak up, or maybe we feel overextended and that we can't say something to advocate for ourselves or to look out for ourselves. So today I want us to think a little bit about how we can build and maintain healthy boundaries. I want to share 2 scriptures with you today. The first is from the Gospel of Matthew. In 5:37 it says, "Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one." And in James 5:12, it echoes Jesus' teachings when James reads, "Above all, my beloved, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation. Both of these verses allude to the practice of oaths, which we see a rich tradition of this in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. We see in ancient Israel that there were plenty of oaths made, maybe between a landowner and a tenant, farmer, or maybe between families, maybe between tribes, even between nations. There were even oaths taken between the people of Israel and God. The idea of the oath is that it had some kind of power within it, the power of blessings and curses, really here emphasizing the power of the curse. Now, you could take an oath and it would have some sort of self-imposed curse on it that if I didn't follow through on this oath, then may my hair fall out, or may something befall my family, right? It was kind of like the almighty jinx, but on a way more serious level. But then there was a higher level of oath, if you will, and really the more common one that we'll see not only examples of in the Old Testament, but also in the 1st and 2nd century context of the New Testament as well. And that is taking oaths by the temple or taking oaths in the name of God. So now, if you break the oath, you are incurring divine punishment for swearing before God and now not following through on what you said you were going to do. But if we think about the whole premise of the oath is that the parties may not trust each other's words enough. And so there needs to be this sort of outside structure to hold the agreement together. By the time we get to Jesus's teachings in Matthew, he is going to dramatically speak against this long tradition of oaths. This is something that was a part of everyone's everyday life, whether it was judicial law or religious law, and in both of those contexts. Instead, Jesus says, let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. In other words, Jesus teaches his followers to allow the power of your words stand for themselves. Do not rely on oaths and the curse that would follow. Instead, give your words the power that they have. Now, this is pretty important because if we imagine that our words have that kind of power and that those words stand alone without the drama of an oath, for example, or without the drama in our modern context of the social permission of trying to explain ourselves and maybe give any kind of excuses or trying to help the other party understand why we're going to say yes or no. This is Jesus's way of saying no is a complete sentence. Your yes is your yes and your no is your no. So imagine with me what we can do with our words when we treat them with the power that they can really have. Well, with that kind of power, our words can be the beginning of building a strong foundation of healthy boundaries in our lives. Imagine, as we begin to use our powerful words to build boundaries, what that looks like. Now, in the protection of those boundaries of yes and no, we have power not only in our words, but now we have more power over our own decisions. We have power over where we give our attention. We have power over who gets our emotional energy. We have power over where we spend our spiritual energy. We have power over our own bodies. We have power over our own time, our own money, our own resources, our own attention. We begin to regain power of how we choose to spend our lives and where we choose to draw a line of what's too much or overextending us or just being too taxing on ourselves. So I want us to consider this. Perhaps there is someone right now who is really crossing the line, who's running over your boundaries, right? And you know that. We have all been there. But can we really be upset with someone for crossing the line when we never drew it? We don't have to beat ourselves up over that, but we can do something about it. What we can do today is decide to draw a healthy line, to draw those boundaries and to show people where those boundaries are respectfully with our powerful words. Out of respect for the wonderful creation that you are, I encourage you to build healthy boundaries that care for you as God's beautiful creation. Protect your body, your time, your health, your talents, your energy, and use them in the way that you know God has called you to use them. And do not feel the pressure to overextend yourself, to do things that you know are harmful, to participate in relationships that you know are manipulative, or where you feel overextended, or where you feel even abused and overworked and taken for granted. You can do something about that. And it begins with your words. Let your yes be your yes, and let your no be your no. Amen. Well, thank you for joining me for this edition of Dessert Devotion. Be sure to join me next time.